because people are never content with what they have, which is the basis of karma.
Coming back to your thing, sort of, what do you choose to do with it?
Or
how'd you put it? Something along the lines of what you need and how you feel about it, or some such. I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself king of infinite space.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, you could, because you would be. The infinitely large and the infinitely small having one thing in common. They are both infinite. So the question becomes, what's your pleasure, sir?
Hello again, folks. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to say hello, beautiful people. I am Oliver Perrin for Semiagog, joined today by Mr. Tim Rudisil from the eastern reaches of Tennessee, elevated mountainous reaches of Tennessee. And this afternoon, we will be talking about something that may well fall in the ESO, or esoterica category. I recently got a request, I think it was from a fellow in Finland, Metsan Otus, I think it was. I can't pronounce Finnish, or Suomi, or how, so I'm doubtless butchering the name, but he suggested that perhaps we take a look at esoterica, these kinds of subjects again. And as we've got all sorts of things moving in the background in terms of the great game and political affairs and all the rest, I thought it would be an appropriate time to take a break and talk about something, anything, frankly.
International finance and men's fashion.
Yes, that's a line from, Die Hard, was it?
Yep.
Men's fashion and international finance. Yes, lovely. So yeah, we're gonna talk about something different today, and it will be desynchronizing from the collective. Stand by. Stay tuned to hear more about what all that means. Before we get started, please follow this channel, Semiagog, as well as A Safer Space. You can do that on Twitter. You can do that on YouTube and on BitChute. You can also find me on Twitter, where I am active, and on Minds, and on Gab, and now on Parler. I'm over there just basically waiting to see if old Brad Parscale and Trump, come up with some sort of exciting news release out that way. So you can follow me there as well. And another thing I should mention before we get started, I now have 2 books that are ready. Unfortunately, I've been waiting for Amazon to send these damn things to me in their final version. I just have my author's proof copies, but there are 2 different books now available online. One of them is a science fiction book, a dystopian tale set in an ugly future world where a professional book thief has been commissioned to find a rare manuscript, and he's pursued by corporate hitman, and it's crazy. It's sort of dystopian, cyberpunkish type book. It's called Vinculum. Again, I'm sorry that I cannot show you the nice versions without this not for resale bar on it, but other people have bought this recently and told me about it, and they get the copies, and yet I, the author, have not. Another one is Cinders from the Bloomery of Youth and the Church of State, a collection of my poems ranging from, what's the date here, 1994 to 2016. This one you would have to search for Oliver Timken Perrin rather than Oliver Perrin. But my book poems is ready as well too. So 2 books there, that's my plug. Now we are in the clear to get started. Thanks to everyone who supports the channel, all of the credit and none of the blame. Mr. Tim.
I want to talk about folding money.
Not to skip over it, right? Here I was just trying to roll right over it, and you weren't having it.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I want that folding money.
Well, yes, folding money is always welcome. If you have things you want to send that are both legal and moral, you can always reach me by writing to my post office box address, which is P.O. Box 16006, Atlanta, Georgia 30316. And if you want to email me directly, you can do so by writing to semiagog@protonmail.com. Now, that long-winded introduction is now complete, and we can turn to our topic. I have been dealing with being on a nocturnal schedule for quite some time. And I started thinking back about it. I'm one of these people who like stay up late and read, burn the midnight oil or whatever. And on many occasions, particularly when I was younger, you'd be out all night up till dawn, that kind of thing. But generally, I would just be up until late at night. However, when I lived in Istanbul, I got in the habit of staying up until around dawn and then trying to go to sleep then. And there was something about how big this city is. Istanbul's a huge city. It's absolutely enormous. And there are very few places in it that are quiet. And so I just got in the habit of staying awake through the darkness of the night because I felt as though I was all alone. There was no noise from the streets. There were no people shouting. Everything was calm and quiet. And I rather liked it that way. I lived there for some years, the second time. And I just got in that habit. And when I came back to the U.S., it stuck with me. And so I became an entirely nocturnal creature, going to bed when the birds started singing. And I found that it set me at a remove from most people and what they were doing. It's like I somehow was moving in interstitial spaces,
You had decoupled from them.
Decoupling, desynchronization, that is a very interesting topic to me. And before I turn it over to you to help me get started thinking about it and its implications and the rest, because there are all kinds of people who stay up late who are, not tight in with the collective, who tend not so much to like the whole thing of puppies in a box or the movements of the herd as a scent of fear spreads across the surface of all the packed in animals and they bolt simply because everyone else bolts. There's certain human beings that tend to stand apart, and so they favor decoupling.
Mean like those people, the peaceful demonstrators who suddenly break into running away, and they break into running in another direction, and they break into running in a third direction.
Yeah, that always brings the image to me of the vestibule of hell that you've heard me mention so many times, where the people are running about in Dante's story in the vestibule of hell, stung by wasps and chasing flags, hordes of them,
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of, too.
Yeah, and so I always felt as though I wanted to stand aside from it. Now, to some extent, I'm going back to a diurnal schedule now, getting up when the sun comes up, which is strange for me after so many years. And to some extent, it is, though not entirely, recoupling me to some extent with what's going on out here in the world in ways that I wouldn't have been resynchronized. And as I said, I wanted to just cover a couple of points. One is that, as I recall, you have some experience this when you were when you were in prison. And maybe you can tell us more about it, but I remember the basics was that you just wanted to. How was it you pointed out to me that I had no idea how loud it was at all times and in all places? It was constant racket in prison and never any respite from the noise. And so you found a way to decouple yourself from the collective.
So I worked third shift at the powerhouse.
Now, these are things we can touch on more. My experience in Turkey, because Turkey itself, leaving my collective in the United States and living another one, is one, decoupling and desynchronization, and then decoupling myself from that yet further put me out there on some eccentric orbit, ruled by Saturn and melancholy, if you will. Also, finding a way to step away from the mad affairs of the prison. That seems to me certainly an allegorical thing, certainly something that could be unpacked as a kind of metaphor for existence itself. But there's one dimension that I'd like to add to this, which is the idea of collective karma. A long time ago, when I was still a young lad, I recall you telling me that just because them are going to go down a particular road, that does not entail in any way that I myself would have to. That essentially, as you pointed it out, I think I'm remembering correctly, you pointed out that I'm under no obligation to go with them And if I choose not to, I don't have to. And so I think I've sort of staked out an area. You know, we've got a couple of examples of in our lives of how we set ourselves apart. You have the idea of people who, for whatever reason, sit in ivory towers looking at the stars. What's his name? Was it Archimedes who said, I get them mixed up. One said, "Do not disturb my circles." The other one says, "You're in my light."
Archimedes said, "Do not disturb my circles." And the other fellow was a Stoic.
Is it a Stoic or was it Diogenes the Cynic?
It was a Stoic. Might have been Diogenes the Cynic. But I think it was a Stoic because he lived in a hogshead outside the gates of Athens.
Oh no, that was definitely Kunikos, the Cynic, Diogenes. Yeah. So, but you get the idea is that the philosophers want to stand apart from these affairs of men, this tawdry bullshit, right, in order to pursue whatever it is that they think is more important. And so, we've staked some of these things out all the way around to the idea of somehow standing apart from the madness that these people get involved in. You can carry it all the way over to the idea of, the shaman who's not allowed to live in the settlement with the normal people, but that everyone runs to when there's a crisis. You can see that played out, as we've talked about before, in Seven Samurai, where the villagers are like, fuck, the bandits are coming again. We got to do something. So let's go out to the mill where the old man sits and he will give us advice. But of course, they don't want the old man in town most of the time. Now, I don't have to tell it to you up on the mountain.
That's right.
So here are a few aspects of this, sort of staking out the area that I'd like to take into consideration, but in particular, as relates to all the crap that is coming down now, even as we speak, with a variety of extraordinary popular delusions and madnesses of crowds that we see beginning around us. And there's every promise that there will be further ones coming over the ridge, up over the horizon here before too long. So with all that in mind, what have you to say about this?
Just it's a good thing to stay the fuck away from it.
But by the same token, isn't it? I mean, you've already done your service, so to speak, and what's the expression? Jumped out of perfectly good airplanes, right? And seen which end of rifle wags and which end bites, as you put it. What about those like myself who think, well, if there's a time in which to speak out, it is now. That's a last little piece I want to put in there, because to a certain extent, it seems as though I'm inviting participation with the insanity. Is there a way to speak to them without, being of the mess, in the world and not of it? Or is it?
Try.
That's what I was about to say. Or is it a thing like we have in the Tao, where it's like, he who meddles in the world's affairs seems all his life to wander down dim and dangerous stairs?
That's almost a quote.
Yeah, I didn't quite get it right. Yeah.
No, you didn't, but that's all right. I forgive you. The thing is that the more you get to expressing yourself on these subjects, the more you are forced to express yourself on these subjects, because the average person cannot quite grasp what you are saying on these subjects. So, depends on whether you want to be one of these fellows who pokes his head out every now and again and says, "Oh, bullshit," and pulls back in like a turtle. Or do you want to be the kind old philosopher who sits out by the mill and gets pestered by these assholes when they think they need it?
Yes, I note, of course, when they think they need it, which has a whole discussion that could be deployed behind that.
Oh, sure could. There was a little girl in Bollywood who made the mistake of telling these people that her father had worked very hard and had become very successful, and that she was very much the beneficiary of karma. Whoops, karma. And they, of course, jumped all over her because she had brought up this stuff with karma that got into caste and all this. She done fucked up and opened her mouth. Now she's got to stand there and take it. But she is the beneficiary of karma. Now we've got to decide whether or not it's going to be good karma or bad karma.
Yeah, it's a whole side thing that we don't have time to go into, but it had never occurred to me how not what you're saying, what I'm about to say. It had never occurred to me that, the ways in which Hindu religious beliefs could roll over into discussions like that, where a whole groups of castes could be resentful about the fact that she brought up karma, because it suggests that their, previous incarnations, they've been, shiftless and useless, or bad. It's just a whole dimension of the social aspects I hadn't even considered. Sorry.
Yeah. That's what I like about the tortoise. The tortoise we have up here, tortoises, they're eastern box turtles. And my wife put out, because there was so much of it, a bucket that we use as a compost bucket. She put out this bucket filled with watermelon rind, never thinking how ingenious tortoises are, which is why I call them tortoise. The box turtle had crawled up the side as far as it could of the bucket and tipped it over, and had gotten in there and rooted out all the watermelon rind, and it had a major feast on it. I imagine that tortoise thought his karma was pretty good.
Well, yeah, that tortoise. And as I recall, turtles and tortoises are two different groups, but far be it from me to quibble.
Well, actually, this is not a turtle. This is a tortoise. It's a dry land creature.
Well, but moving along to your point, because of course I wouldn't quibble, having just done so. But how does this take it back around to me? Because I'm a little slow today. How this relates to the karma?
Well, the karma was it stumbled up on all this good watermelon rind, which tortoises do love. They just love watermelon rind. And they will eat right down to where there's nothing but the hide left on the watermelon. I mean, they eat every part of it, including the green, except for the rind. They don't like the rind. So, being humans, we like the pink. So there was all this pinkish green and greenish pink and whatnot left on the watermelon rind, which of course just made the tortoise as happy as a dead pig in sunshine to feel of shit. So the tortoise ate it up. Ate up as much of it as he could, then wandered off again.
And what lesson am I, as grasshopper, supposed to carry away from this? I'm still... Is it just an anecdote?
It's an anecdote, but it's an anecdote that relates to karma. Now, I'll leave you to figure out how the karma works in this, because this is good stuff.
How karma works in the case of a turtle and or tortoise that happens upon a bucket full of things that it can eat.
Mm-hmm. That they really love, and they're willing to expend all that energy to tip the bucket over, and then crawl around inside the bucket and drag out all the pieces.
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that there was a situation where some effort on its own part was necessary to recognize the opportunity and expend the energy to make the most of it, which brings to mind the image, as it happens, that I have been exploring. We talked about opportunity dancing upon the ball with the forelock, right? The classical image. But I'd recently come across this further stuff. Hopefully I've still got it up. Did I shut it down? Oh, shame on me. Perhaps I did. No, I didn't. We've got the figure. There's apparently a much older one of the figure of occasion or opportunity. And it's all back through the ancient world. It's called Kairos, Kairos. So I've been looking at Kairos, and end at the idea of opportunity. And this seems to fit rather neatly. You've got to see it coming. You have to recognize it, because the forelock by which you can seize the opportunity, of course, as you know, hangs down in front, which means you got to see it coming and get it that way. Because once it goes by, the rest of the head is shaved. And as you're aware, but many of our viewers might not have thought it through, balanced atop a ball as it is. There are other ones where it's on a wheel turned sideways, but the best images are on a sphere. Because as you can see with any acrobat atop a ball, because that ball, is spherical, you can go any direction, 360 degrees at any moment. You don't have a fixed track. And the point of that from the image is that you can't anticipate what direction it's going to go as you could with a wheeled vehicle. You see the wheel turn, you know what direction it's going to go, but on a ball, and it makes it that much harder to anticipate when opportunity is going to appear. And so it underscores these aspects that we just talked about with the turtle or the tortoise. But that's all I can get out of it. I'm not quite sure I see the rest of the karma.
Well, the people think that there is good karma and there is bad karma. They are wrong. There is simply the direct relationship between your past endeavors and your current situation. No morality gets into it. That's where people fuck up.
And that's where it underscores the irony of the Indian public being upset about this woman having said it. Because the assumption implicit in all that is that they see some sort of moral turpitude associated with the fact that she had good karma, quote unquote good karma, and they didn't.
How about that? Instead of seeing that karma is merely the relationship of what you need to how you get it. Now, who can say whether or not this young woman enjoys her karma, or does she just enjoy it selfishly? Is she giving away all the things that she could achieve from this particular karmic endeavor that is currently laid before her? Or is she merely selfishly looking for the jujube?
Right, and there are people who others on the outside would think were, enjoying the best of karma, But to me, I've of course seen, you've probably seen it too, people who are fairly wealthy. I've never seen super rich, but I've seen fairly wealthy people who were miserable because they had no way of knowing whether anyone actually liked them or if they just wanted a piece of the shit they had. And I got to see it close up. They were miserable. So who is to judge? What's that line from Hamlet? But thinking makes it so.
Exactly so. And so a person could look as though they were in the midst of having everything their own way, but not really.
Well, it's that line from the philosophers as well. Was it Plato? Can't remember, but it's one of them. It probably Plato, but basically the line is, don't judge a man until you've seen his entire life, because the whole thing could be, turned to shit in the last 5 minutes, whether a man is happy or sad, defeated or triumphant. There's no way to measure it until it's there of a piece.
All at once. Which leads us rather to the Roman triumph, and how they used to paint the hands and the face of the triumphant.
In red, was it not?
Red. Red. Yeah. Had a little guy standing behind him going, "You are mortal. You are mortal. You are mortal. Don't forget, you are mortal."
And the red symbolism remains opaque to me.
Why did they give triumphs?
Well, to celebrate the victory in battle and to...
Oh,
it's something having to do with blood and the rest?
I would think so.
Right. Well, I've, observed many times you've got the triumphal arch. And for those who want to look into it, that's a ritual of submission, subjugation. You're well aware of this. They had to pass under a yoke. And when they didn't have a yoke, they would use a framework of spears. and the captives would have to go underneath it, bent forward, showing that they had bent the neck, subjection. And that became the arch, the symbolic arch through which the triumphal procession would pass with all its slaves and all its booty. And of course, we have that today, though people have forgotten it as they pass through the metal detectors, as we go through these little archways that show our subjection before we enter into the delimited area. But yeah, now there's this idea of how you see it. You know, you were talking about how, is the triumph a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it an opportunity for some teaching story to unfold about hubris, right? But we've got the business of relating it to the synchronization and desynchronization. And what occurs to me there, I think, is that if I want to make the jump from where we are now in the conversation over to the collective, you've got the idea of individually addressing what your karma is, and you've got the idea of sort of a group karma, if you will. And I would not say that one or the other is. These are for purposes of discussion that we distinguish, and I think it's certainly there hypothetically that one would not have to indulge in any kind of group karma. Nevertheless, if you're unconscious, as we've seen, as we get with the image of the vestibule of hell with Dante, obviously all these people are in hell because they are subject to this type of karma. Sorry there, ladies and gentlemen. I had to take a quick break. Where were we? We were with collective and individual aspects of karma, and whether or not a person can free themselves from collective karma, if indeed there is such a thing as collective karma.
I think there is.
But you've talked in the past about the idea of Maya, the illusion of manifestation. And I think, as I recall, the way you put it was, it's completely an illusion, but if the truck hits you, you're still going to explode into a cloud of red mist, Yeah. So you'd say there is or isn't collective karma? I mean, how am I to understand that and the relation?
I would say there is and isn't collective karma.
And how would you?
If you participate with the collective, you're going to have the collective karma.
And if you don't, you don't. Or it's at least possible that if you don't, you don't.
Only to the extent that it is unavoidable because of the nature of the collective karma. And your knowledge of how to avoid collective karma. I hate to say it, but there is always, these are not the droids you're looking for.
You mean sort of slipping past all of it?
Yes, these are not the droids we're looking for.
Just stepping out of the whole thing. But doesn't that not require a certain amount of consciousness? It would seem to me that,
yes, it does.
That there are plenty of people who think they've stepped away from it and have only thereby stepped more deeply into it.
Yes.
I mean, that goes back to what's that old teaching story where the told to be the old monk and the young monk are traveling, and the picks up the woman to carry her across the street. And as they travel on further, the young monk's like, we were told that you're never supposed to have any contact with women. Well, why'd you pick her up? And the guy says something like, I put her down 3 miles back. Why haven't you? Whether or not we, in the one case, we got the younger monk that thinks that he never engaged with it at all, and yet he's the one most tightly bound to it.
Yes, he is.
Or the business of hotai, throwing stuff into the bag and it falls out the hole in the bottom.
Holes. 2 holes.
2 holes, pardon me. And then there's the business of...
That's all right. I owned the hotai statue once.
I do recall it was ivory, too. You picked it up at a secondhand shop, but it was antique and ivory. Elephant ivory, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Oh, well.
But it had been shoe polished to give it a patina.
God.
Which I then spent my time stripping off. Lovely old thing.
Yes, but there's also the one of not understanding the way in which things work. So that there's a story Well, anyway, we don't need to go there. But a few have been laid out about being tied to it or not being tied to it. How is it that one may know whether or not one is stepping off from the collective experience?
Can one say, is that so? And me.
Well, you better give the short version of that story then for people who aren't familiar with it.
Well, there was a monk who set himself up a little meditation spot. And he was out in the woods, well away from everybody. And then this farmer and his wife, young man, his daughter, his wife moved in. And they set up a farm not far from him. And so, as part of their religious duties, they brought him food and things, He said, is that so? And they were talking about, how he was doing this and doing that for the karma of the people around about. He said, is that so? And then one day the farmer's wife was pregnant. And she gave birth to a daughter. And they brought the daughter to be blessed by the monk, and he blessed her. And is that so? And as the daughter grew up, she took over the duties of bringing the food to him. And he thanked her for it and so on. And then she reached the age of consent and became very nubile, very enticing, and got pregnant by this son of another farmer who moved in nearby. And they were terrified and afraid of the young girl and her beau, that the parents would just flip the fuck out. So the daughter winds up going all the way to term and tells the parents, when they've asked her and beaten her and talked to her harshly about who the father is, finally she says, it's the monk. It's the monk. And so the father and the mother both get together and go out and chastise the monk. He says, is that so? Is that so? They bring him the baby. And he must make arrangements to feed the baby and care for it and carry on with it. And then the daughter and her boyfriend decide to marry, and they want the baby back. And so they tell the parents that really it's his baby. And the daughter had said this so that the parents would not do all kinds of craziness about it. And they go to the monk and they tell him and they apologize to him, and they're just groveling and groveling. And he says, is that so?
So there's the old be in the world but not of it line.
Is it?
Is that so? Right. Sure. That's one potential angle. Well, let me come at it from a different direction about the business, the ability of, to say, is that so? Right.
Mm-hmm. And mean it.
Absolutely. But there is this business of, for example, your old riff about, hard men with horny hands who stay awake at night so that you may sleep safely.
Yeah.
Are they involved with the collective karma?
Yeah.
And where would we be without them?
I don't know.
Like you're just inching over to be. This whole conversation is going to be a series of you saying, "Is that so?" Now, well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is the idea that there is bad shit that happens, right? And there is a need to get involved. For example, if your culture is being tanked around you and destroyed, or at least there can be a need. What's your pleasure, sir? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to get involved in attempting to address any of the folly of humanity or events around you without being dragged into it?
Ah, you must determine the degree to which you wish to become involved. Hopefully, you determine that before you poke your head out of your shell and go, huh?
Right,
Now,
like the young lady talking about karma.
exactly so.
Or any number of people online talking about anti-whites who can have their careers destroyed and all the rest.
Right. You see, the thing is that you have to decide what degree you're going to become involved. I have decided that I will, to a certain degree, but only to a certain degree, involve myself with all of this foolishness, which to me is just foolishness. You may have noticed constantly I do this. Right?
And mention that you don't give a shit.
Yeah, you must place the pebble just so. Well, what if you put the pebble over the fuck here? What if you put the pebble the fuck over here? Always you must be concerned with balance. It's like we talked about Ping and his father.
Yeah,
and
for those
all
who
the stuff that's coming out.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Tim had mentioned this, but we were talking before this whole discussion started, ladies and gentlemen, and he was pointing out that information is coming out about Ping's background and history, the fact that his father was persona non grata with the party and all these other sort of things before we started recording.
Mm-hmm. And that Ping himself had to spend many, many years in unpleasant places doing manual labor jobs. He was constantly refused admission to the party. He was constantly refused this, that, and the other that the party had within its grant, I should say. And now he's got it all. So, we must now look at another case of karma. Is Mr. Ping's karma good, bad, indifferent? Is his karma coming into play with other people's karma? Much thought must go into this matter. For me, it is of no importance. Because if it weren't Ping, it would be somebody else. If it weren't the people who are against Ping, it would be some other people.
Likewise, if it weren't imported immigrants, it would be packs of joggers. If it wasn't packs of joggers, it would be someone else that was casting a pall over the garden.
Indeed so. Because people are never content with what they have, which is the basis of karma.
Coming back to your thing, sort of, what do you choose to do with it? Or how'd you put it? Something along the lines of what you need and how you feel about it, or some such. I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself king of infinite space.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, you could, because you would be. The infinitely large and the infinitely small having one thing in common: they are both infinite. So the question becomes, what's your pleasure, sir?
Well, then,
really a serious question.
Absolutely.
What's your pleasure, sir?
And it seems to be tied directly to, you pays you money, it takes you chances.
Yes, indeed.
If you want to ride the ride, step right up.
One ride. Here we go. The one ticket. Yes, indeed.
The ticket you pay for with the coin of your life. Yes.
Well, we don't mention that to start with, do we?
Well, no. It's always softly, softly, catchy monkey, right?
Yes, it is. It is actual.
But I mean, you could see the overarching question here, though, is that To what extent? I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is there are no hard and fast rules, and each man must measure it, or woman, based upon their feelings. To what degree do they wish to become involved? Obviously, the monk that said, "Is that so?" despite maintaining distance, had one foot on the earth. It's kind of like, the images of the Tibetan Tanka where they have both legs up in the lotus position versus having one leg hanging down because they're still partially in the world. Clearly he was responding to their anger when they said, "You did this, you got her pregnant, you have to take care of the child." And he's like, "Is that so?" Right? Then they come back later, years later, after he spent all that time raising the kid. And they're like, "Oh, we're so sorry. You didn't do anything." Is that so? Nevertheless, he took the food they brought. He took the child when it was delivered and helped to raise it. So there was still some degree of engagement. You see, this is a question that's of some interest to me because you saw it doubtless in the metaphor I opened with of having been desynchronized and nocturnal and choosing now to align myself to walk by day, so to speak, with some of these ass hats. And so the question is, to what extent do you get involved in it? And I guess your answer is, to what extent do you wish to be involved?
That's my answer.
And to what extent is it worth it to you?
To what extent is it worth it to you? And why is it worth it to you to involve yourself to that extent? Why? And therein hangs a life. A whole life. Why do people feel that it is necessary to become, as Trump did, a billionaire and learn to play all these strange games with reality TV and political theater of one sort or another, when he is, according to all reportage, entirely different one-on-one? And then to become president of the United States and put up with all the shit he has put up with. Now, you would think that at the end of 4 years, the guy would be going, "Holy shit, get me the fuck away from these crazy people." No. It's still worth it to him. Why is it worth it to him?
Or why is it worth it to people who say we must protect our people? We must secure the existence of white people and our children, etc. And the reality is that, and they seek a kind of immortality through genetics, and yet there is nothing further from the truth. It's that old line, what is it, from the Bhagavad Gita? "Strike, stay your hand, it matters not. All will perish."
Yes.
Which is not to say that any individual person shouldn't choose to take up arms against a sea of troubles, and in theory, at least, by opposing, end them. But the question is, why? Why does it matter to you? And actually, the end of that little soliloquy does rather fit, doesn't it? And by opposing him, and to die, to sleep no more. And that sleep of death, what dreams may come,
When we have shuffled off this mortal coil,
must give us pause.
Give us pause.
There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. Yes. So why? And we see that actually in the paralysis of Hamlet in that story, right? Must he take action? Must he not? Will it matter?
You don't mean that we're acting out Hamlet, do you?
Each one of us,
yes. Right here today. Most specifically today. Makes you wonder what part Trump's playing. Oh, well.
Yes, it does make one wonder. Yes. You're going to have some friends come back from Wittenberg with some new ideas. Yes.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
There are things undreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio.
Indeed, there are.
Well, now we have 50 minutes in ish. I don't know. We had that little break there in the middle. But I want to give you a way to wrap this up because, as you know, I wind this way, I wind that way. Is there any way that you can perhaps illustrate the point you're trying to make with your own experience having desynchronized in prison? It just seems to me that prison itself is just such a lovely metaphor for being manifest in the world and subject to the durance vile of life beneath the fixed stars, that there must be some way you can summarize some of these points based on using that as a mirror in which all this can be reflected.
Well, I probably could. The thing is that no matter how I sliced it up, big slices, thin slices, cross grain, with the grain, whatever, I still come back to the same thing. What is it worth to you? I know what it's worth to me, but what is it worth to you? To engage with these fantasies, this Maya that everyone thinks is so important, this garbage.
I thought you were going to say garden, and it just turned left into garbage.
This garbage. You must remember that we, white people like you and I, are a minority. I heard somebody choking along and shouting out that the white people in this world were 4% of the population. I don't know how you define white people, I define black. He was black. But we're 4% of the population. And yet, we have developed 99% of the technology. It makes you wonder where the karma would be without us. And so I am back at the same point of saying, to sweep the cave with brooms and to stir up the dust and laugh and laugh.